Okay, let us get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Winter Quarter Grant Writing Workshop hosted by the Resilience Lab and the CSF. Before we get started, I have turned on your ability to rename yourself, so please include your preferred name and your pronouns. And I've also turned on the feature for captions, so please let me know if you are unable to access either one of those. Okay. Okay, so my name is Michelle, and I'm the Seed Grant Coordinator for the Resilience Lab. And today with me are Sarah and Fatima, the two other facilitators for today's workshop. Sarah is the student intern at the Resilience Lab, and Fatima is the outreach coordinator at the Campus Sustainability Fund. In our audience, we also have Sasha, Billy, and Kyle, who will be helping facilitate our breakout rooms and helping us through our Q&A.
All right, hi everyone. So here's our brief outline for the presentation today. So from our brief introduction, we're gonna go over to talking about and introducing the two entities that are hosting this event today, the UW Resilience Lab and the Campus Sustainability Fund, also known as the CSF. We'll talk about our joint funding known as the seed grants, and then we'll move on to the meat of this webinar where we talk about the important steps and outlines and grant proposals. And we will share some exceptional projects and proposals, and we'll also talk about some different tips and best practices and the multiple benefits of applying for grant proposals and just grants and projects in general. And then we will move on to some more resource lists from both the UW and outside of the UW. And then we'll end with a brief Q&A. So we got a lot of questions before you guys joined in today. So if you don't get to all of them, we will follow up on an email. And then we're gonna end with a breakout room activity. We encourage you to stay so that you can really step away from this webinar feeling a little bit more ready to apply for a grant and feel like you have a sense of idea and understand how to go through that process. So this is our brief outline. Hopefully it helps you feel like you know what's gonna happen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. There's only so much I can say about the Resilience Lab in this short amount of time. But in short, we promote student and faculty well-being through education, research partnerships, and our core programs and initiatives. Some of our initiatives include Well-Being for Life and Learning initiative, where we've released a guidebook to support instructors aiming to increase well-being in the classroom. We are also partnered with the Center for Child and Family Wellbeing for the Be Real program, which is a 6-week program that promotes well-being and is available for students, staff, and instructors. We also have research partnerships in our seed grant partnership with CSF, which is what we will be focusing on today. And I'm a student intern with the lab, and I feel very fortunate to be part of it, and I get to interact with really wonderful people. And so I encourage you all to check out our website and social media for more information.
Yeah, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Campus Sustainability Fund. We are a student-run, student-funded programs that was established since 2011. Our values and what we stand for can be reflected in this mission statement, which is that we are creating a sustainable campus, fostering intentional and involved university culture by funding student-led interdisciplinary projects that drive equity, resilience, and stewardship on campus. As I mentioned, we were all student-led and student-funded project, and we got established back in 2011 by a group of passionate students who wanted to take the initiative to bring more opportunities for students to create projects that would implement sustainability solutions on campus and combat climate change. After a great grassroots movement and support from different entities on campus, we've actually created a fund called the Campus Sustainability Fund. And annually, we have around $400,000 a pool of funding available for students to make different sustainability projects around campus. So we get our resources from the student activities fee and the student technologies fee. So we are greatly supported by our students, and we have this funding available for students. And in this next slide, you can see that our program has been growing for the past decade. We funded over 200 projects, 40 of which are active, and totaling in allocation over $3.5 million. These projects range from innovative sustainability technologies, ecological management, to the arts and social parts of sustainability. Of course, there's a great list of projects to mention, but we cannot get to that today, but we will provide you with more information in our follow-up email if you would like to learn more. But yeah. Here I'm going to just briefly talk about how the CSF and the Resilience Lab came to be and where we began our relationship. So we began our collaboration with the UW Resilience Lab back in 2018-2019 fiscal year, after making the connection that the two entities have similar overlapping values. With the discussions at the CSF staff and committee, we came to the conclusion that resilience, compassion, emotional and physical well-being of students are a part of what keeps the movement of sustainability going. And so we must take care of our own bodies and our own community in order to maintain an environmental and social sustainability initiatives on the campus. Thus, we began our partnerships and we created something called the SEED grants, which support resilience and compassion building initiatives that foster community and also help create inclusive and intersectional sustainability projects on campus.
And so over the past 3 years, the Resilience Sea Grant Program has funded over 46 projects to date and awarded more than $120,000. The Sea Grants are small on-campus grants that support impactful activities, programs, projects, and research led by students and staff on the university campus that align with the goals of the CSF and the lab and our compassion initiatives. The projects that we funded so far are focused on highlighting resilience and compassion as a way to build and foster connection and community across the 3 UW campuses and in the greater Seattle area.
Okay, so to get you all excited about grant writing, we have a brief activity to share interests and passions and to learn more about you all. So you can go ahead and click on the link in the chat to engage with us on Jamboard. And Jamboard is sort of this interactive whiteboard where you get to collaboratively work with other people. So I'm going to switch over to that. As you open the link up, you can use the sticky note feature on the left-hand side here. You'll see that a sticky note has already been posted as an example. And so as a prompt, what is your passion? If you were to be given an unlimited amount of funding or resources for you to develop your passion into some sort of project or organization to help serve your community, what type of project would you develop? And we're going to give you all about 2 minutes for you to share your thoughts.
Casio, playing on my heart just like a Casio, breaking it apart so you can let it go. Oh, wait another year, that's not original. I'm cynical, alright, let's go now. When all your dreams are gone, and you're still holding on, you waited far too long. I know, you know, so play it cool. I just want the keys back to my vehicle. They're just gonna tell you that I wasn't real. I just want to tell you this is how I feel.
Oh no.
I know
Did
you
someone
feel
clear?
it, know you feel it.
Oh no.
Playing on my heart just like a Casio, breaking it apart so you can let it go. We're another year, that's not original. Cynical, alright, let's go now. When all your dreams are gone, and you're still holding on, you waited far too long. So I know, you know, so when all your dreams are gone, and you're still holding on, you waited far too long.
Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. I think someone accidentally cleared the screen, but that is okay because you all just filled it right back up with all these amazing ideas. Um, Seeing a lot of really awesome brainstorming ideas. Thank you all for engaging with this. We're gonna switch back over and feel free to continue writing ideas out, but we're gonna switch back over. Okay, so now we're going to transition to host the core part of the grant writing workshop. This is where we're going to get into the logistics, tips, and important takeaways in grant writing.
So we're just going to give you the steps of how to start writing your grant proposal. And we know that no two grant funding opportunities are the same, but we just wanted to highlight the most common elements that you need to successfully write your grant proposal. On this first slide, we're going to go over these first 5 parts: your cover letter, your organizational summary, your problems assessment, your goals and objectives, and your implementation plan. In your cover letter, this should be a brief introduction of an overview of your entire proposal. This section should include information about your organization, your project needs, your methods, etc. This will be the first opportunity that the funder gets to read your grant, so make sure that your cover letter entices the reader to keep going. Despite this being the first thing that people read, make sure that you write this last so that you can incorporate all of the lovely things that you wrote throughout your entire grant proposal. Next, we're going to go to the organizational summary. So this section is optional, but it may be required for some applications. So in this section, you just need to build upon what was written in your cover letter and describe your organization, its missions, and the function of your organization. And then third, we have our problems assessment. So this should be the main section of your grant proposal. In this section, you really need to convince the funder why your funding is essential. Document the need or the problem that you're stating with data and link that need back to the funding source's goals and priorities. So this would be a good place to be doing a lot of your research for your grant proposal. And then next we have our goals and objectives. So in this section, you will explain what your organization plans to do to address or solve the problem that you guys listed above in the problems assessment. So you need to identify how you hope to accomplish, what you hope to accomplish, which will be your goals, and then what the specific results are, your objectives that you expect to see in measurable terms. Address how the problem mentioned above is expected to change as a result of your completion. And then a really cool resource for writing your goals and objectives is SMART objectives. SMART stands for specific, measurable, obtainable, relevant, time-based. And so then you can use this to clearly state and refine the goals and objectives of your project. And then lastly on the slide, we have the implementation plan. So the implementation plan is how you will achieve the goals and objectives that you listed in the earlier section. You, in this section, describe the activities that directly support the achievement of your objectives, provide a timeline, and be as detailed as possible. In these 2 sections that I just mentioned, the goals and objectives and the implementation plan, you should not only cover the items that I just mentioned, but also plainly describe your project. The funder must be able to walk away from these sections understanding what your project is. And then on the second part of writing your grant proposal is your evaluation section, sustainability, project budget, and other components. So in your evaluation section, you should present how you plan to assess your project's accomplishments. How will you evaluate the impacts of your project? And this section is helpful not only for the funder, but for your project team as well. In this area, you'll be able to see critical feedback and assess if your project worked and how to improve in the future. In the sustainability section, you should describe how your project will continue once the grant ends and how you will cover expenses that are not covered or supported by that grant. Many funders like to see how you will support your project in the future, and they want to know if your project is financially healthy and sustainable over a long term. This section would be a great place to include if you're receiving any funding from other sources, and what your project goals are for the future. How will you maintain your project in the long run, and is your project sustainable? And then 8th is your project budget. In this section, identify the costs of your project and describe the methods that you choose to determine those costs. Present your grant proposal budget in a way that it makes an excellent impression on the grant reviewer. Make sure that you review the guidelines of the funder and ensure that the budget that you provide is both reasonable and allowable. And then follow these basic tips when writing your budget. Make sure that your figures are aligned correctly, double check all of your numbers and make sure that they are accurate and add up. Include column headings, and then organize your budget in a way that it is easy to read and understand. And lastly, have another person look over your budget. These tips seem really straightforward, but they are what makes your budget look professional and stand out. And then lastly, in your other components, some funders like to see letters of support or proof of 501c3 status. So on campus, for on-campus grants like the CSF and the SEED grants, letters of support from staff are really important, and they help improve your application. And then proof of 501c3 status may be important for funding opportunities that are off campus.
Okay, I'm now going to talk a bit about the tips and best practices in writing a successful grant. So number 1, get to know the organization. Establish a common ground between the work of your project and the funding organization's values. Do your research and make sure your project aligns with the organization's mission and goals and vice versa. 2, take time to research the problem area. Through your proposal, demonstrate that you understand the problem and how your project will be part of the solution. 3, creative narrative. What is your connection to this project and why does it matter? So why are you or your organization the best position to implement in this project on this issue? 4, clearly define the need. Share the what, but more importantly, the why. Make sure the reader understands why your project is important. 5, incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion. So incorporating an equity lens should be something that your team takes in consideration when you're planning out your project, but don't just throw in those phrases around to make your application look better. Take the time to clearly define how your values and work are actively contributing to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then 6, reach out to program coordinators for help, any questions and feedback. So this one may seem very straightforward, but on-campus students like Michelle and Fatima are there to help you through the process and make sure your proposal stands out. Other funders on and off campus also have the staff that are there to support you during the process of writing your grants, and they can help you highlight the key points that the selection committee will be grading your proposal on. And then 7, reapply, normalize failure. So just because you weren't awarded the funding this cycle does not mean that it can't happen in the future. If your project was denied funding, reach out to the organization, see what parts of your application were lacking, and how you can improve the next time around. And then finally, build relationships with faculty. So for on-campus grants, letters of support from faculty will help you establish credibility, and it shows that someone in a high place believes the work that you're doing. Having letters of support may not be a requirement for your application, but always include them when possible.
Awesome. Now we're going to move on to talking a little bit about some exceptional projects that really stood out that make them seem very successful. But before getting into the successful project proposals, I want to say that success can come in multiple forms. Many of the times learning from the mistakes or even applying those mistakes or even turning in your project on time can be successful. So project proposal, they will be successful through learning opportunities and if it's filled with passion and interpersonal value, and more importantly, the application demonstrates a clear and articulate need and how the grant proposal meets the criteria and the value of the granting organization. So I just wanted to say that out there, put that out there beforehand. But I'm going to use Project IF as an example. This was a project called the Indoor Farm that was funded by the Campus Sustainability Fund in 2019. and its aim was to create a indoor vertical farming system that has many number of sustainability characteristics that really stood out. But the proposal was, it was very very detailed and had many clear explanations. So there's a specific and detailed response to criteria, impacts were clearly defined, budget timelines reflected the present and the future of the planning. With these types of highly technical and highly scientific qualitative projects, the proposal itself needs to be comprehensively planned out. So a comprehensive plan for both implementation and an ongoing, both technical and financial steps, and including budgeting. Also, this proposal demonstrated a very articulate case for its needs, as well as how the students are involved, and also created a vision of a greater impact on the UNEP community. Within its timeline, there's a great case for longevity, possibility of institutionalization for the project, which then demonstrated to our committee that the project has a higher chance of sustaining itself and becoming more self-sufficient, which is something we really look for in our granting program. So how can students use our grants as seed money to create a bigger, longer, and more self-sustained impact on campus? And those characteristics really, really stand out. But also to steer away from more of a quantitative projects such as this that are super high technical, to look at more projects that like do more qualitative work. Majority of our seed grants that we talked about previously use qualitative work in their implementation process. So, and that requires a lot of storytelling as a major component, as well as other values such as clarity, planning, it demonstrates articulate need and how the grant proposal meets the criteria and the value of our organization. So yeah, these are some different characteristics that we really look out for when we're reading, and this project has definitely been an example of a very exceptional proposal.
Awesome. So why should you even apply for grants? So through leading and creating your own projects, you're going to be learning skills that will inherently add to your professional development. And so this is just a really great time to experiment and grow. You can also turn your ideas and passions into reality. And so just being a part of an educational institution, it's common for students to need the time, space, and resources to use what they learn in the classroom and apply their knowledge into action. And so implementing your projects with the help of grants means that you're receiving like the best of both worlds, and you're able to learn and apply your passions and knowledge into a project that matters to you and to your community. You can also absolutely use grant writing in a portfolio for career development. And in this space on campus, you have the opportunity and freedom to fail and succeed through hands-on leadership. So this experience, without a doubt, provides you with professional development skills that the classroom may not provide. So you're really also building a resume and at the same time gaining that confidence in your skills and abilities in whatever field you may be in. And then also students may apply for financial compensation and pay themselves for the work that they're doing. So this is really a great way to make sure that you're supporting yourself as a student and at the same time applying your knowledge and passions to a hands-on project without compromising the ability to financially support yourself and your needs and your time. And then finally, it's free money. So our seed grants stress the work and experiences the students and teams learn from and don't require laborious grant reporting like external grants do.
Yeah, now let's transition into more of what to look out for when writing a grant proposal. So hopefully you can tackle them head on. Some very common mistakes include not following instructions. So it's super important that you follow the instructions and you include all things required in the application. This helps demonstrate that you are invested in your work and the grant opportunity. So if there's a request for an outreach plan or even a project evaluation strategy, make sure to complete that. If you're confused about certain instructions and how to complete them, the best thing to do is to reach out and ask for help. Also, another thing that can be seen commonly as a mistake is that if the proposal involves too much of a risk, and this is more, this more applies to more of like highly innovative and technical projects. Not all projects, has high risks, but if those high risks are not mitigated, or if they seem as non-feasible with the constraints of the resources and the times that you're of when you're applying, and there's no mitigation plan on how to alleviate those risks, it can be it cannot seem very strong. So, and this is definitely only applies for projects that are super highly technical and more innovative scientific. Another thing is that if the proposal doesn't meet with the organizational values of the grant entity. So to avoid this, thoughtfully research the funder's interests. Each funding entity has its interests, an interest in making grants for a particular purpose, sometimes very specific purposes. So if your grant proposal does not include values that fit into the grant entity's guidelines and goals, it can seem very off-putting. Also, some proposals that avoid or dismiss feedback by the organization can be to look out for, because a lot of our seed grants and the CSF grants, we provide a comprehensive and detailed feedback once you apply. So a lot of the times, if students do not look out for them and really take them seriously, it can really reduce their chances of being funded. Also, incomplete grant applications are very common too. Each year, anywhere between 15 to 20% of the applications we receive can come as incomplete. Make sure that you read the directions, turn it in complete on time, and so that goes back to the fact that you have to follow instructions. This is very outer layer things, but it's really important to look out for. Also, something that I haven't included on this page is this lack of outreach. So we live in a very big university, and it can be very difficult to engage with other students, especially right now. So it's important that you create some kind of outreach plan, and that really increases your the ways in which your project comes up to the committee. So it's important to include that, and especially because incorporating student involvement is a big component of these projects, and we really, really value that. All this to say is that avoiding these shortcomings, it will make it both, it will both increase your chances of getting funded, but also it'll speed up the process, because we won't have to reach back and forth too much and ask you for the things ask you for the missing pieces. And the voting committee can finalize the decisions sooner. So these are really important things to look out for.
And so now that we've completed the grant writing process part of this presentation, we wanted to provide you guys with some resources. So we've listed on the left-hand side some on-campus grants that you can apply to, such as the Mary Gates or the Husky Seed Fund. And then we've also provided you with some off-campus grants, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Seattle Foundation, and the Neighbor to Neighbor. On this slide, it's not written, but I did want to highlight some of the differences between on-campus grants and off-campus grants. So on-campus grants, in particular the CSF and SEED grants, were more focused on student-led projects. So having large student involvement in your projects makes your application more appealing. Our grants tend to be less transactional, so we're more focused on student learning, education, awareness, and development. We also have a greater emphasis on community building on our campus, and we encourage students to reapply and meet with personalized one-on-one grant writing coaches and project coaches. And then for off-campus grants, they do tend to be a little bit more competitive and strict and less flexible with their rules, where on-campus grants, we're really here to support students and their projects. And so then we also wanted to highlight the upcoming SEED grant application. So the CSF and the Resilience Lab will be hosting, again, our yearly SEED grant cycle, opening on April 1st. So if you're looking to create projects that foster resilience and compassion building on campus, and looking for projects that are focused on inclusive and intersectional sustainability, consider applying to the SEED grants. Also
consider applying for the separate CSF grants that are that will close. It's not open. The application window will close on April 1st, but these are just projects. These are for projects that are like directly linked to sustainability, or you need funding above $3,000. So just to know that we're out here and that application is due on April 1st. Through this process, the CSF has awarded funding projects anywhere from $1,000 to $200,000. So this is another like opportunity. So we're presenting with you two different grants. And just an FYI, we will share more information on our follow-up email so you know about these opportunities better, because I can understand that it can be a little overwhelming.
And that is our presentation on grant writing. So now we are going to transition into our Q&A. I'm going to call Billy and Kyle to come help and facilitate with the questions. So if anybody has any questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can use the raise hand feature and unmute yourself. There were also some questions that were provided in the registration form, so we can start tackling those. Let me see.
From Stacy?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wasn't sure.
Stacy, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation and the information. It's all very helpful. And I'm just wondering if either of the programs that you mentioned or other organizations at the university have any kind of opportunity for something like a grant counselor who you might meet with and discuss your need and might help you see the potential of certain grants for your specific project.
I can go ahead and jump in on that one. Hi, I'm Kyle. Yeah, so both the CSF and the Resilience Lab, Michelle, Billy, myself, Fatima, are all really happy to kind of spend that time with grant applicants, helping them develop ideas, which is definitely a little bit different from maybe like off-campus grants. We really, see ourselves as a resource to help through that grant writing process. We have an independent committee that actually votes on the project, so we're not necessarily making the decision ultimately, so it gives us a little bit of freedom to really kind of advocate for your project and for your success.
Thank you.
I'll just follow up. There may be other resources, and we can do some digging with a follow-up email that are like specific resources for that on campus. So we'll definitely look around and see if we can find anything kind of outside of our organizations as well.
I have a question about the CSF grants in particular. So let's say that someone starts a small project, maybe with a seed grant or with some other grant, and then they are interested in bringing that to scale for the university. Would a CSF grant be a place to introduce an already existing project that you want to bring to scale? So maybe it's like I'm thinking about a small kind of focus group, support group that I'm building for parents, student or university students who are also parents, kind of build community there. And it's a small scale project, but if it's successful, then I would think about next year wanting to bring it to like a large scale university project, which would require significantly more funding than I can provide on my own. But do they consider things like that, like existing projects that want to go to scale?
I'll go ahead and jump in again. Yeah, so absolutely. And that's definitely was the hope of the collaboration with the seed grants as well, was that some of these projects eventually we would be able to kind of move beyond the seed phase, maybe into the germination phase. I think the CSF is definitely kind of like we see ourselves as an early Kickstarter organization. So, I think definitely kind of like certainly would be a good fit for our organization, like in the early development phases of the project. And then as the project grows, as Fatima mentioned, we'd want to see it kind of get additional departmental and institutional buy-in to be self-sustaining.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Christina, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there might be any like shadowing opportunities for us to kind of see like the manufacturing of a grant from scratch or project from scratch to completion, just seeing what that looks like.
I can maybe answer to that. In terms of shadowing and creating how it goes from start to finish, we're more than happy to meet with you on like an individual case basis, but we also have our committee meetings where people vote on projects, students vote on projects, and it's open for the public, and that might actually create a lot of clarity on what the behind the scenes are like to give more perspective to the students or whoever's applying. And or we can also talk about, we also do a lot of presentations around how projects came to be. And we have a lot of different outreaching methods and how we engage the university about like project proposals. For example, the CSF has a podcast, a student podcast, where we interview past applicants and how they're doing. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
Do you feel like that answered your question, Christina? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you very much. How do we get connected with that group again? You probably posted it and I missed it.
Yeah. We will follow up with an email, but
Okay.
you can always reach out to our email, uwcsf.edu, and I'm always happy to talk more.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. And thanks for putting this together.
Are there any other questions? Let me check the chat. No, I can ask one more question, something that was commonly asked in the application. Are CSF and SEED grants open to graduate or students who are graduating this upcoming year? Kyle and Billy.
Sure, I'll go ahead and jump in. Yes, so definitely open to graduate students. That includes master's and doctoral students. And if a student is graduating, typically we would ask for the group to essentially assign a student project lead before they graduate, or someone who's kind of the main point of contact for us to get in touch with. And they can continue being involved with the project. But they, if they're being paid, for example, they wouldn't be able to be paid as a student. So there are some limitations there, but they could certainly be involved with the project as an alum.
Billy, would you like to answer for the Resilience Lab?
Yeah, I mimic everything Kyle said. I also want to make sure that folks know as well that like staff and faculty are able to apply for these grants as well, as long as students are the primary beneficiaries of that project. And we actually had several projects in our last cohort that had an alumni board that actually worked with current students to help complete a project. So alumni still being a part of the process is fine, as long as an active student is at the helm.
Okay, great. And I think that is it for questions. We are now going to transition to our breakout activity. So for our breakout activity, we will break you out into rooms and you can choose the prompt that interests you and your team. And so we will have the link put in the chat. And so you will work through the steps on the page, and each group number corresponds with the page on the Jamboard, and we're using Jamboard again. So use the sticky note feature to share your ideas. You'll have about 15 minutes to work in your group. We aren't going to be jumping through groups because we just want to allow for natural conversation. So use the ask for help feature to call one of the facilitators into the room, and we will help you that way. And so then when we come back, we will have closing remarks and we'll have two groups share out. And so I will open the breakout room. Facilitators, stay in this room, please.
I have a 3:45, but I just wanted to say that was awesome. Great work.